Shaden Khallaf is currently leads the regional policy analysis and design division for the Middle East and North Africa at the UN Human Commissioner for Refugees, which is known as UNHCR. Shaden's area of expertise include international human rights, refugee law, post-conflict transition, peace building, gender policy, protection, refugees, all the hardcore topics that are heartbreaking or heart-aching, if I may say. You have worked with, we have more than 20 years experience in the international arena. You have been also a lecturer at the American University of Cairo, at the Jordan University. You have been selected as one of the top 100 alumni of the century by the American University of Cairo last year, as well as Women of Egypt hero, and featured among the top 365 inspiring Arab women by Women in Business area. So we are very happy to have you today, Shaden. The word is yours before getting into the question.
Thank you so much, Soraya. I'm really delighted to be part of this conversation, and I've been following the ones that you've been having before, and really fantastic effort and initiative, and I'm honored to be among those really exceptional speakers that you've had. So thank you very much for including me in this series. I think it's a really important moment in time to have these conversations and to try to look for these sources of continued inspiration. I think we find it all around. Not that I'm necessarily one of those sources, but I think just these conversations bring out lots of areas of hope and continued ambition for youth in the region, and I really appreciate that. So thank you for this.
What were the most important turning points in your life that shaped the person that you are today and made you the successful woman that you are today?
Having moved around a lot as a child with my family, I was exposed very early on to differences between people and cultures and religions and nationalities and ideas and thought processes. And somehow, while initially it was something that was difficult to accept and deal with and to unpack a little bit, with time, I came to see that this was actually such a huge source of wealth and strength and beauty of humanity. These differences that sometimes are used to separate us and to polarize us are in fact the same things that can definitely unite us and bring us together as an international community. So I think being exposed to that very early on as a child is something that definitely marked me and helped me think broadly and think globally and think about the world, about the planet, about humanity as a whole.
As a lecturer at the American University of Cairo, Jordan University for a while, how do you think academia or working in the academic field added to your personality, to your intellect, to the way you perceive things, to your professional growth? How did you bridge the gap between, let's say, the theoretical approach and the practical approach?
It was a struggle at the beginning, I have to say, Soraya, because there are very different let's say, paces of work in the academic world and in the humanitarian field, the practitioners world, within which I was working, where everything is urgent, everything is an emergency, everything is a crisis, and or much, I mean, given the context that I was working in before, and where in academia we have the luxury of time and reflection and analysis and abstraction in a way. So it took me a while to adjust to that, but in the end, I think I managed somehow to be able to bridge both. I was able, I hope, I think successfully to speak the language of both academics and practitioners and see how we can bring them closer together and better utilize academia in the interest of strong impact for practitioners and persons who are in need on the ground. So I think I would highly recommend bridging different aspects of professional careers in order to gain the best of both and to bring things closer together.
Your work is heart-aching. Seeing the problem escalating day to day, getting in touch with misplaced people, with refugees, within the current economic situation in the region, adding to it COVID and its implications. How to your knowledge or as a professional in the field, what concerns you the most in the refugee crisis? What concerns you in terms of this escalating number of refugees in the region? If we're talking about Lebanon, Jordan, refugee camps, what really concerns you? We know that the UN is doing a great job. The UNHCR is supporting, doing aid, awareness on different fronts, which we will get into throughout the talk. But you as a person, and from your own reading of the situation.
First of all, first and foremost, as a mother, the impact on children is devastating. And it is heartbreaking, as you mentioned, every day, day in and day out, to see that kids are out of school, they're separated from their families, they have an uncertain future, they don't know where their next meal will come from, they live in unsafe locations in many places around the region or around the world. And it continues to break my heart 20 years into the job. It really is difficult. However, having said that, there are lots of opportunities to continue to improve their situation, to provide them with protection, to provide them with the basic rights that they are entitled to. And this is something that maybe we can get into a little bit later on, as you mentioned. But just the particular challenges that children, displaced children, face is definitely something that I think and worry about a great deal. The second thing is probably the lack of prospects for solutions, broadly speaking, longer term, bigger picture, to the crises that we face in the region. So when we look at the conflicts that predominantly are facing the Middle East and North Africa, none of them have immediate solutions in the near horizon, in the near future. So this means that we will need to continue to keep up the assistance and the protection that we provide for people who are fleeing these wars, because they can't go back. And the solution is that the wars end. The ideal solution is that the wars end and people can return home, people who have fled these wars. But given that that likelihood is not very high at the moment for many of these conflicts, we have to keep doing what we're doing for a much longer period. And this means that we have to adapt, we have to innovate, we have to be flexible, we have to be partnering differently, thinking differently, financing differently. So this is, it needs a great deal of energy and momentum and collaboration and long-term thinking and policy and strategic planning.
What kind of skills do you think are mostly needed if we are talking about youth or young generation now? And we will get into youth later on, but since you're mentioning the skills-based approach, and which we do also as Mentor Area, if you want to stimulate the minds of those young people, to make them think outside the box, to, as refugees, they don't have much opportunities, they don't have access maybe to quality education and quality, etc. with all the challenges. How can we stimulate their minds? What skills do you think they will need?
Yeah, I think there are a lot, but a couple of things, I'll give you a couple of examples of things that have taken place recently. We've had some collaboration with private sector companies who've done coding training for refugees in camps in Jordan, and that was very successful. I think there was a lot of appetite among the Syrian kids to take part in that. And another area we're trying to build skills in general is entrepreneurship. What does it mean to be a young entrepreneur? What tools does a young entrepreneur need, and how can refugees access these tools and be better equipped to enter into this entrepreneurship ecosystem in the region that is evolving? And that's something that you probably know a lot more about than I do, but that we're trying to connect young entrepreneurs in the region. We actually focus specifically on women among the refugee community, with successful business women around the region. So we had businesswomen from Kuwait, from Morocco, from Egypt, from Jordan and Lebanon meet directly with a group of refugee entrepreneur women, and see what kind of matches can be created, what skills can be transferred, what platform can be offered for this to be a sustainable thing. This is something
kind of mentorship, right?
Absolutely,
kind of
absolutely.
Professional mentorship, and this is the trend globally. The mentorship has been really shown a lot of effect and results on the lives of so many young people. What do you think, throughout your experience and your professional experience in the field, what have you noticed as common factors across the region when it comes to the humanitarian crisis or humanitarian development, the refugee crisis? What have you noticed? Is the pain the same in each part of the world when we talk about refugees or misplaced people? What are the things that strike you throughout your work?
One thing that definitely stands out is the resilience of people who have lost everything. It's every single time it just hits me in the face. The strength of people who have to see bombs falling on their house and grab their kids and run, and not knowing where they're going or what they will do or how they will live or how they will feed their kids or how long they will be in exile. Yet they do it, and they arrive, and they remain, and they find a way to keep going and to smile. Really, it's just unbelievably inspiring and it reminds us of why we do the job that we do and why we are here to give them all the support and protection that they are entitled to as people who are fleeing violence and conflict. So that's one thing, just the incredible strength that refugees have within them. I think the second thing that strikes me also every time is perhaps the fact that we don't always think as longer term as we should from the beginning. So organizationally, as institutions in the international community, we still tend to think of emergencies as an immediate thing that we need to address now, and then we'll get to the development part of it later. We'll think later about the longer term things. But in fact, what we're seeing is that all crises are somehow becoming protracted. The average duration of displacement in the world today is not less than 20 years. That's not a short-lived situation. It's something that requires longer-term thinking and planning. And so I think we're getting into the habit of doing that. We're building the internal capacity to do that as organizations that deal with crises. But it's definitely something that will grow in the years to come. Yes, of course it will be. I mean, COVID will affect the financing of humanitarian operations next year. For this year, I think we're probably okay, but I think for the years to come, financing will be affected. So increasingly, how can we look at self-reliance, sustaining livelihoods, financial inclusion, economic empowerment? These are things that we really think are critical for moving forward in the region.
Absolutely, and reskilling those people, as you said, to find opportunities and to be equipped with the right skills or elements or competencies to survive either the crisis or get integrated in the society and find jobs at a later stage.
Yeah.
So, Shaden, you're a woman who is successful in what you do, and you are in a position that I know many young women would dream to be in. What are the challenges that have faced you? If we are talking about you as a woman working in the international arena, what kind of challenges faced you as a woman in this part of the world? And how did you deal with them?
So I'll maybe divide that into two parts. So there's the internal organizational institutional issues, and there's the aspect of the work that relates to being in the field, working with other partners and actors, etc. So maybe I'll start with the second one.
How did Corona affected your work? Are you testing in the camps? Do you have numbers? Did it slow down your work? What is the impact on those people? Because we don't know. Like, we might say that people in camps, for example, for those who are in camps, not in the urban areas, they don't go in and out a lot. So they might be in good hands in terms of Corona. So would you give us just an insight about how the situation?
Sure. So at the beginning, of course, it was very difficult for us to operate as we would have liked to, because the same restrictions on movement that apply to everyone apply to us as UN entities in most places throughout the region. So we were also working remotely. We were also unable to reach the people who we needed and wanted to reach, unfortunately. But it made us force ourselves to think about how we can do it differently. So we ramped up a great deal of our online hotline access for people who had questions, for people who had issues, for people who whose documentation was expiring, or who had domestic violence to report, or who had health issues that they couldn't access doctors, etc. So we had a huge spike in our online remote counseling and services and so on, because we had to shut down our registration centers. All of the services were suspended for those in the urban contexts, and for those who are in settlements or camps, restrictions on movement were also placed there. So there was very little movement in and out, and in fact we didn't have very high numbers at all of instances of Corona in any refugee settlements, thankfully, alhamdulillah. Refugees were aware of sanitation requirements and sanitizing, and additional hygiene kits were provided all throughout the region, and awareness campaigns were put in place. And there was a really strong push at the beginning of the crisis, which has now continued, of course, to ramp up the preventive measures and to think through what a treatment and management of cases would look like later, and then eventually how we would look at longer term impact of COVID. So beyond the health impact.
That was my next question, actually.
Exactly. So the health impact was one, but then what we saw and what we are seeing now is that it's very much a poverty and protection crisis that is unfolding, because most of those who were initially employed informally were unable, of course, to continue to resume their livelihood, their access to livelihood. And these informal jobs are the first to go in any crisis situation. So what we're seeing now is a very, very steep increase in those that are living under the poverty lines, those who are having to reduce meals to feed their kids, those who are having to share overcrowded shelters because they were evicted from their homes, they can't pay the rent, and lots of other negative impacts, unfortunately. So this is going to be the big crisis, the socioeconomic crisis that we will continue to deal with for a while.
You sit on the board of several organizations that work with youth. You are well exposed, well rounded in terms of youth empowerment issues. So how do you see these? How effective have been those organizations in enhancing the livelihoods of those young people, especially the refugees in the Arab world?
I think there's a great deal of interest and initiative and interest in working on youth issues throughout the region, particularly among refugee youth. I think perhaps what one of the things that we can think about as we move into this new phase of post-corona, etc., is stronger collaboration and looking at where the synergies lie between the many different initiatives and examples and individual efforts that have been taking place. Because sometimes there's a lot of interest and focus on one issue, and then there's a gap on others. And so what we would like to do is make sure that all of this is properly synchronized. And there are lots of platforms to do that already, but I think we need to bring it down to a more local level, as you were saying earlier. So I think working with local civil society actors is absolutely critical in this coming phase. And this is something that we've been very keen to do with UNHCR in the region over the past few years, and really build these networks of collaboration at the grassroots level, where people are really the first responders. They are there before the UN comes in with any of its funding or programs, and they are there after the UN funds dry up and people have to move on. So we're really investing in their networking amongst themselves and learning the lessons across the region. So between Tunisia and Jordan, what can be done collaboratively? What examples can they share of good practices together that can strengthen the response in both of the countries? So we're really trying to work at that local level and to ensure that civil society actors have a voice that is heard, and that they're sitting at the table in the design of solutions and responses, not just in the implementation when things are
bottom up, identifying the needs directly through the beneficiaries themselves and integrating them in the process in an interactive way. Shaden, we have a set of quick questions. But before going into my quick questions and taking the audience questions, we still have around 13 minutes. I have a personal question. Like, when do you think we will see, because throughout our work, we use a lot of art and sports to reach out to our beneficiaries, especially youth. And we sat together on board of a very interesting panel last year during the Luna Film Festival for Humanity, where we spoke about the role of films in refugees, and this industry it can be used as an advocacy tool. I mean, films, a great advocacy tool to reach out to the beneficiaries as well as impacting policy. So when do you think we might see refugees in general, not only in films, not being used as tools for emotional abuse or for to drain the donors or the people, rather than individuals using them and looking at them as human beings, not as objects?
There is such an interest to take part and to be part of the solution and to really be highlighting the value of refugee contributors. So we're breaking it down into 3 areas, if I can, super quickly. One, art as therapy and art as a way to release and to share and to express for refugees. Secondly, art as a narrative changing tool. So hopefully we can find one day a big drama production in Ramadan on the plight of refugees and really change the perception that many people have of them. And then thirdly, looking at art as a bridge between practitioners and policymakers, and looking at the policy framework that can change the legal context within which refugees are allowed to operate and to live. So we're working on those 3 areas, and I'm super excited about this, and we really call on anyone who's interested to take part and support to please reach out and join this effort, because there is a lot of potential and a lot of excitement around this area.
I'm happy to hear that, because art is one strong tool to reach out and to make change. And young people specifically are there on the social media, on the TV, on YouTube, on so many tools that we should be using to make a difference. So I have a set of quick questions with quick answers to you personally. So who was your inspiring mentor and his most valuable advice that you kept with you all those years?
I think in my professional career, I was very inspired by a woman by the name of Karen Abu Zaid, who was head of UNRWA, the other UN refugee agency that deals with Palestinians. And she is someone who is just incredibly practical and professional and strategic, but at the same time, someone with a very big heart, and someone who hasn't, over the years of her incredible career, lost the human touch and the human and the humbleness and the ability to really speak from the heart. And that's something I appreciate a great deal.
What advice would you give to someone who is just starting their career and want to pursue a career with refugees in the field?
I think you have to be sure that this is what you want to do, because it's a challenging field, and you will be tested a lot. Your patience, your resilience, your absolutely, you have to be confident that this is what you want to do. You have to equip yourself with the right tools and skills and knowledge. You have to understand the dynamics in the region well, and you have to understand, I think, how the system works and where the challenges are and where the gaps are. And thirdly, I think you have to, at some point, protect yourself and protect your own space, because it's very easy to get personally affected by this type of work. And many of us starting out in this field maybe didn't get this advice, and it affected many of us personally at some level. To see day in and day out the struggles and the pain and the difficulty and so on, it has to somehow affect us. So you need to be able to deal with that, and you need to prepare yourself for how to deal with that, and create a space and create a community and create an environment that allows you to do that, but remain solid and resilient at the same time.
If I may add also, it might help to have also a mentor from that field.
Absolutely, fantastic point.
It all, and could give some guidance and advice, as well as a very important point that you mentioned earlier, keeping our humanity. With the misery that we're seeing every day on news, on the day-to-day life, it's really hard to keep our humanity and keep the sense of feeling or to sympathy or even feeling with others. At some point, everything turns into numbers. You lose this side of the humanity that we have. Shaden, thank you so much for this inspiring talk, for this really joyful, hopeful. I'm really happy to have hosted you today in that talk. I'm sure a lot of people today got inspired, and hopefully we get to see a better status for those resettled people or misplaced or displaced or refugees, and at some point no refugees anymore. Thank you so much. The word is yours.
Thank you so much, Soraya. I can't tell you how much it meant to me to have this conversation with you, and I really appreciate the work that you do with youth and children in the region, and the opportunities that you offer them. It's something that is so necessary and so important, and all my appreciation to Mentor Arabia and to you for that. And I would really encourage, just my last word would be, I would really encourage anyone who is interested in this field to reach out, whether there are many people that can be contacted, but I think it's an area that the region needs a lot of people to be a part of. It needs a whole social consciousness, a revival of social consciousness, I think, to deal with the impact that displacement has had on the region. We unfortunately have not seen the end of the crises, and so I think we need to be equipped as nations, as institutions, as individuals to deal with it. And I wish anybody getting into this field lots of success, and do count on me for anything I can provide.